What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Primarch Purpose. This is the series in which I give you my overall thoughts and opinions on what I think the endgame goal for the Primarchs might be from the Primarch project by the Emperor. The Emperor had definite goals in mind when he created the different Primarchs because he modified them specifically. So you don't just do that all willy-nilly without a real purpose. So with that said, we never get to see it happen because the Horus Heresy happens. So for this series, and I go over it in a bit more detail, the intro overview ramble, I set up some criteria for this what-if setting. Firstly, the Great Crusade comes to a successful conclusion, and the Emperor leads an imperial truth-driven imperium. The Primarchs are all loyal to the Emperor with their legions in tow, although they have their typical sibling rivalry as they tend to do. There's no civil war because of it, however. And because we have an imperial truth-driven imperium, we have no ecclesiarchy or their forces associated with the Imperium. They could be breakaway renegade factions, if anything. We have no Inquisition as we typically know it. What I call the Inquisition in this theoretical what-if setting, I just do for ease of referring to it, but the standard Inquisition as we know it in 40k wouldn't exist, nor would their factions either, such as Death Watch or Grey Knights. There are no chapters, there's still only legions, and we still have plenty of threats. It's not a harmonious galaxy. The Imperium is not going to encompass the entire galaxy for this what if, because it never really was set up to do so, at least not initially. So we have plenty of Xenos threats, including stuff that will come later, such as the reawakening of the Necrons and the arrival of the Tyranids, and even the evolution of the Tau. And we have plenty of Eldar and Dark Eldar and Orc threats. We still have Chaos and Warp incursions, demonic threats, corruption of that nature, and insurrectionist breakaway human factions as well. Things that just don't want to stick with the Imperium, or things that must worship something like the Ecclesiarchy, being a renegade force or whatever. You still have human factions to deal with as well. So yeah, there's plenty of strife in the galaxy, and that's the setting we're looking at for the purposes of this what if. So going in reverse Legion order, we're checking out the Primarch of the 15th Legion, the Sorcerer King, the Crimson King, the Red Cyclops, the Red Giant, whatever you want to call him. We're looking at Magnus the Red, leader of one of my favorite all-time legions, the Thousand Sons. He is a cool Primarch, a unique Primarch. He's probably the most, you could say, changed or different of the Primarchs in terms of being mutated. In fact, it's also speculated that his physical form is just the form his warp energy decided to take. That's how much of a psyker he is viewed to be. But that's neither here nor there. Magnus is very physically capable and mentally capable. He is a true scholar warrior. He has an obsession with understanding and controlling the warp, and furthering his sorcerer's powers, his psychic capabilities. Truly a scholar warrior, where Lorgar views himself more, as a scholar and not a warrior. Magnus is both, so that's kind of interesting. And Magnus is unique amongst his brothers in that he is entirely aware of his creation. Right now, obviously, before he was actually, his genes were put together into a form, he was nothing. But the moment the Emperor made the 15th Primarch, the moment it became to be that, Magnus was conscious of everything, which is really weird and really interesting. He is aware of the development of himself, and he remembers all this time in the pod completely. He remembers everything, including being whisked away. He also, at that time, and even after that time, regularly communicated with the Emperor via telepathy before their actual reunion. So that's really interesting, and it's really unique, and also kind of is an interesting setup for the Emperor pursuing the Primarchs, because he is aware that one still exists, at the very least. Maybe not where it is just yet, but that one still exists. So that's cool. And it's probably why he was it's probably why he found Horus first, because that was the closest Primarch to Terra that he could sense or find and hone in on, and they went there, and it turned out to not be Magnus, but hey, at least he found one. And that also spurred on the Great Crusade to find stuff. So eventually, the Emperor makes it to Prospero to reunite with Magnus. And what's interesting is they reunited as if they were long lost friends who just were only able to talk to each other on the phone. Like when the emperor found Magnus, they converse as if they have known each other for years, because they have, which is really unique amongst the Primarchs. Other Primarchs may have been aware that they were found, and or be aware that they were part of a project, I should say. Like Corax is aware he's a 19th, for example, and pretty much all the Primarchs have some awareness of the Emperor once they see him, but no other Primarch communicate with the Emperor prior to their rediscoveries. That's pretty cool. So it's in this whole concept and fluff of Magnus and his legion that we see their purpose. This is the most straightforward of all the Primarchs and legions, I feel, in terms of purpose, because what we see is a Psyker-driven legion and a Psyker superior style of Primarch, right? His psychic might is unquestionable. His legion psychic ability is unquestionable. So whatever the end game goal is for this particular legion, we know it involves Psyker capability, because the Emperor created Magnus this way and then created the legion this way and sought out specific things for this legion's gene seed and everything to become this legion. So right there is pretty straightforward and easy to figure out. When you read the novelizations of the Horus Heresy, and we get to Magnus trying to warn the Emperor, thus creating what is called Magnus's Folly, where he breaches the Imperial Webway, causing the Emperor to be forced to stay on the Golden Throne to hold the demonic horrors at bay, kind of Magnus being used by chaos there. And his conversing with the Emperor, trying to warn him, the Emperor was enraged by Magnus and didn't really listen to him, and kind of showcased the folly of his ways by talking to him and showing him what his plans were for Magnus. Like, yes, the Council of Nicaea was there to sanction and keep you protected, to keep you safe, because, you know, the warp is becoming a threat, and then once this is done, you were going to be the steward of the Golden Throne. So the Magnus was meant to sit atop the Golden Throne and not be withered away to nothing, because prior to the breach of the Imperial Webway project by Magnus, the Golden Throne didn't require somebody sitting at the top at 24/7 with all their might focused on it. That only happened because of the demonic breach they couldn't close. So Magnus's purpose is spelled out for us, pretty straightforward. He was meant to be the steward of the Golden Throne, basically. Him and his legion, we could extrapolate, the guardians of it. Not only that, perhaps they were meant to be the, you could say, the escorts of anything going through the Imperial Webway into the Webway proper. Explorators of the Webway as well, with Magnus leading or, sitting atop the Golden Throne. Malcador could also sit atop the throne. We know that. We saw that. The Emperor, of course, as well. So it's not like it's only Magnus up there. But Magnus and his legion are basically stewards, guardians, and explorators of the Webway. You could think is their ultimate endgame purpose. What it would have been. A truly great honor, because the Imperial Webway was meant to kind of circumvent warp travel whenever possible. Considering the psychic might of Magnus, the psychic might of the Legion, Prospero having their own little gateway type setup as well, we could see a rapid strike force of Thousand Suns were absolutely necessary to deploy them. And outside of that, guardians and stewards of the throne, like I said, in the Imperial Webway, and explorators of it, seeking out further branches to make theirs for the Imperial Webway, fighting off Eldar and Dark Eldar and warp incursions, seeing collapsed areas of the Webway, sealing off areas perhaps as well to protect the Imperial Webway, and maybe even seeking out the Black Library once this knowledge was known and the Emperor made it clear that they should find it. In that sense, in this theoretical what if. So, pretty kind of straightforward purpose there that we can extrapolate off of. Really, we only saw that Magnus was going to be the sitting atop the Golden Throne to allow Imperial forces to traverse the Imperial Webway. But from that, we could extrapolate, embellish it up a bit. On top of that, they would redeploy and fight and rapidly strike at things that require a Psyker's touch, right? They wouldn't be the typical Vanguard Legion force to go fight wars where necessary. They would be used sparingly because of their primary importance in the heart of the palace, the Imperial Palace, right? to be stewards of that Golden Throne to make sure nothing happens. But a bunch of Eldar show up. Outside of having a pariah force of the Sisters of Silence or any other pariahs showing up to combat that, have the Thousand Sons combat it. They're Psykers as well. Psyker on Psyker is kind of one of the best ways to deal with it. When the Tyranids eventually show up, they'll be really capable and instrumental in perhaps trying to crack into the hive mind, kind of like Tigerius does in 40k, or at least try to figure out a way to break down the Tyranids as well. So they'd be pretty instrumental in figuring out things with the Tyranids as well. So we have a lot of that going on. Plus, being warp users, psychers, sorcerers, they'd be pretty instrumental in fighting chaos as well. So while we have Alfarius in one front of this Inquisition type force in this setting, and Lorgar also fighting chaos, Lorgar being a okay psyker in his own right, and having knowledge of the rites and rituals and what to do to banish the demon and banish chaos and fight against it and take up that role. Magnus and his forces could also be used to bring extra psychic might against that as well. They'd be very knowledgeable about it too. So while not permanently part of that duo there, they could be kind of this third trifecta where necessary to counsel and to bolster forces. Again, they're not doing it as a primary role, although they're very capable or would be very capable at it. This is because the primary role of stewardship of the Golden Throne is so important. But where necessary, Magnus or at least elements of his legion can go and support. And where there is a massive warp rift that's dangerous, the legion could go temporarily deal with that, and then the Imperial Webway could be, of course, defended by the Sisters of Silence and the Custodian Guard with the Emperor there, or whatever the case might be. But those are just my thoughts on what I think the endgame goal, endgame purpose of not only the Legion, or Magnus, I should say, but his Legion would be. And it's pretty straightforward, at least the Golden Throne part of it, because the Emperor directly shows/tells Magnus, hey, you fool. All this is done is set up for you to be the steward of this Golden Throne and this Imperial Webway project. So it would be a legion that would exist. It wouldn't be a secretive legion, like unknown to the Imperial populace at large, but it would be a rare legion to see in direct open conflict, unless it's against Eldar or other type of Psyker forces or demonic forces or things where Psyker's touch is absolutely necessary, and a fine Psyker's touch is that. They'd be fighting a lot of unseen wars, things in the Webway, trying to push forth the Imperial Webway further and further onto more and more planets, sealing breaches that they can, or sealing off sectors that are too dangerous, and checking out and trying to pursue the Black Library, or at least trying to find it at the very least. Stuff like that. Things against Tyranids as well could work. And like I said, where a very capable Psyker's touch is needed is where Magnus and his Legion would be. But it's a Legion only used when necessary, because their primary role, as we see, is so important. Because where is the Golden Throne? In the center of the Imperial Palace. So stewardship of that is pretty important. It also lets the Emperor be a bit more mobile when necessary, and when Magnus's presence is necessary in a battlefield, then somebody else could take the role on the Golden Throne. Maybe even Ahriman could sit atop it temporarily when necessary, and so on and so forth. Again, we have to remember the Golden Throne becomes such a taxing thing for a Psyker after the breach of the Webway, because at that point it's uncontrolled demonic incursion inside there, and it takes all of the Psyker's might just to keep it sealed. But when you don't have that, the strain is considerably less. At least that's how it's kind of assumed to be set up. Anyways, so that's my thoughts for Magnus and his Legion. Yet again, to be very repetitious, pretty straightforward just from looking at their creation, what they're capable of, what their specialties are, and what the Emperor outright tells Magnus. And then you can extrapolate from there, right? Because clearly a Psyker heavy force that's very capable, very talented, would work very well against Chaos also. Anyways, that's basically that. What are your thoughts for Magnus? What do you think his ultimate endgame goal is? Do you think it's different? Do you think that, okay, he could be used on the Golden Throne, but his might should be used elsewhere? Whatever it is, share it in the comment section below. As all spitball, conjecture, opinions. None of it's fact, right? It's a fictional universe anyway, and we'll never get to see this actually happen. Anyways, thanks very much for sticking through it. Any other questions, comments, or requests, leave them in the comment section. And until next time, take it easy.